Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I used to sleep like a man who trusted the night. Lights out at 11:15, wake up at 6:05 to the same soft alarm that sounds like a kid's xylophone. Even the dog, Moose, had learned the rhythm, one circle on his bed, sigh, gone. The phone ringing at 1:13 a.m. didn't fit the pattern. I answered before the second buzz. "Mr. Hale?" a voice said, crisp and tired at once. "This is Officer Wynn with the county police. We have your wife." Every part of me went cold and hot at the same time. "What?" "She's okay," he said quickly, which is the kind of sentence that sets the floor back under you and then pulls it away. "She's been in an accident. Minor injuries. She's at Street Augustin." "What happened?" "Single car collision with a guardrail. Airbags deployed." "The vehicle is registered to a Laura Hale?" "Yes," I said. The word felt small. There was also mention of a second party. A passenger fled the scene before officers arrived. "We're still gathering details." "Fled," I repeated, because repeating is a thing people do when meaning is bigger than the words. "We'll need to talk when you get here," he said. "But right now she's stable." I woke Chloe first because she was home from college on fall break, sleeping the sleep only 19-year-olds can afford. I knocked and then opened the door, because parenthood is a lifetime of walking lines. "We need to go," I said. "Your mom's been in an accident." She sat up fast, hair everywhere. "Is she?" "She's alive," I said. "Street Augustin." We were dressed and in the car in 5 minutes. I texted Laura's parents on the way, because if I didn't and they found out later, I would be a villain in a story I didn't write. Her mother, Evelyn, texted back instantly, "We're coming." Her father, Frank, sent nothing, which is how he says everything. The hospital at night is its own planet. Fluorescent moons, quiet hallways, that smell of sanitizer and old coffee. At the desk they looked at me like I was a form to be filled in. "Hale," I said. "Laura. My wife." The nurse's eyes softened by 1 degree. "Room C-7. She's being seen." They let us in with the blue visitor stickers you put on crooked in a hurry. Laura was propped up on the bed, her hair matted where the headrest had pressed, a cut at her hairline held together with white tape. She looked older and younger at once, the way people do when pain peels you back. She smiled when she saw us and then tried to make her face normal, like that would make my hands stop shaking. "Hey," she said. "It looks worse than it is." Chloe moved to her side and took her hand like she had a right to it, which she did. "What happened?" "A deer," Laura said too quickly. I swerved and she stopped. The word hung there, waiting for a floor. Officer Wynn stood just inside the curtain, his notebook out. He nodded at us with that practiced mix of empathy and procedure. "Mrs. Hale, can we go over the location one more time?" He looked at me. "The vehicle was found on Meridian Parkway, just south of Maple." "That's right?" Laura looked at him, then at me, then at Chloe. "Yes," she said, small. Meridian Parkway might as well have been on the moon for how often we go there. It's on the far side of the city, beyond the freeway stacks, near nothing that belongs to our lives. Not our gym, not our grocery store, not her office or mine. A place we drive past and forget exists. "Why were you there?" The question came out of my mouth before my brain dressed it up. Officer Wynn looked at me, then down at his notebook like it could offer a distraction. Laura's eyes flicked to Chloe and then to me. "I was with someone," she said, the words soft enough to make the ear hard. "A friend." The word friend had a taste like pennies. Chloe's hand tightened in Laura's, then pulled away. "A friend who ran?" she asked, quieter than Officer Wynn. Laura looked at the blanket. "He panicked." "He," I said, because sometimes a single letter does the work for you. The officer cleared his throat gently. "Mr. Hale, we'll need to complete the incident report. At this time, Mrs. Hale is not facing any charges. We may need to follow up about the passenger. For now, she has a mild concussion, some bruising. She's very lucky." Lucky is a generous word. We nodded at the officer because we didn't know what else to do, And he stepped back through the curtain with that soft, respectful Russell Hospital's invent. Chloe stood up and walked 3 steps to the foot of the bed and 3 steps back like she was learning a dance she didn't audition for. "You were on Meridian," she said. "That's 25 minutes from home." "Mom, why?" Laura looked at me, then at the 4th pole, then at a point halfway between us. "Chloe, can we?" "No," Chloe said, and it wasn't rude, it was a boundary set by a child who had just been invited into an adult catastrophe. "I drove home from college because I wanted to surprise you and now I'm in a hospital at 2 a.m. Because you were where you shouldn't be, with someone who ran away. We can do honesty. I wanted to tell my daughter to stop, to take care of herself, to leave the interrogation to people with badges and dads whose hands had stopped shaking. I didn't. I sat down in the vinyl chair and felt my 49 years and 11 months settle into my bones. "Laura," I said. "Please." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were not the eyes I married. They were the eyes of a person who had been living 2 lives and had just realized one of them was set on fire. "There's an apartment on Washington and 3rd, she said. 2 blocks from the park. Thomas," she stopped, corrected herself like it mattered, "Tom, has a place there." I was leaving. The name sat between us like a wet coat. "Tom," I repeated, not because I needed it clarified, but because the syllable needed to be held responsible for existing. "Work?" I asked, because my brain likes categories that make things easier to file. "Gym? Church? Random man from the place with the smoothies?" "Work," she said. "A vendor. We." Chloe made a sound that could have been a laugh if we didn't know her. "A vendor," she said. "Like a person who sells things you don't need." In the morning, the doctor came in with discharge instructions and a measured tone. Concussion protocol. No driving for 72 hours. Follow up in a week. He asked Laura to track her headaches and watch for lights that hurt. He asked me if we had someone who could stay with her tonight. I said yes because my mouth wasn't in the habit of telling medical professionals no. I offered to drive Laura home. She asked me to take her to her parents instead. "Just for today," she said. "I should be with them." I didn't argue. It felt like the kind of choice a person makes when they know they need to confess on ground where the furniture knows them. We drove in a silence that got in everywhere. Chloe sat in the back, like she used to when she was 6 and worried if I would remember the route without her pointing. Evelyn and Frank were waiting when we pulled up. Frank held the storm door like it had done something wrong. Evelyn took one look at Laura's bandage and put a hand to her chest in the theater of concern mothers perform even when no one is watching. "What happened?" Evelyn asked, which was both a good and bad question. Laura sat on their couch, the couch we'd spilled red wine on in 2014 and never confessed to. She told them the same story in fewer words: accident, passenger, Meridian Parkway, vendor, apartment. She did not cry. Evelyn did. Frank stared at a point above Laura's left shoulder like he was looking at his own father. "You could have died," Chloe said, dead center, no decoration. "You could have died and that man would have left you there." "Chloe," Evelyn said, a warning with a hug inside it. "No," Frank said, and his voice carried a quiet I have learned to fear. He looked at Laura. "She's right." Evelyn turned to him, offense blooming in her cheeks. "Frank. We taught you better," he said to Laura, not loud, not cruel, just final. "Your mother taught you compassion. I taught you not to be a coward." Evelyn's eyes flashed, a reflex defense. "Don't you call her." "She wasn't alone in that car," he said. "She wasn't alone in the months that led up to it." Laura put her head in her hands. "I am so sorry," she said, and I believed her. Belief didn't change anything. It just made the room quieter. We left Laura there with her parents because that's what she asked for, and Chloe and I drove home to a kitchen that looked exactly the same and nothing like the place we'd left at midnight. Moose circled his bed, sigh, gone. I stood at the sink and stared at the yard where I've promised myself a fence for 3 summers. Chloe got a glass of water and didn't drink it. "How long?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "We'll learn." She nodded. "Do we have to know everything?" No, I said. We have to know enough. Are you going to leave? A 19-year-old asking like a 5-year-old. I don't know, I said again. We're going to slow down. We're going to put one thing on the table at a time. First is your mom's health. Then the truth. Then the calendar. She nodded like she was making notes for a class she hadn't wanted to take. I slept on the couch because beds are for people who know who they are. At 7, I called my boss and said family emergency, which is HR code for don't ask and I won't have to lie. He told me to take the week. People are kinder than you think until they aren't. At noon, a number I didn't recognize called. Mr. Hale? A man's voice. This is Tom Whitaker. My chest tightened around the name like a vice. This is awkward, he said, and I wanted to applaud his understatement. I wanted to say I'm sorry Laura was hurt. I shouldn't have, I panicked. You panicked, I repeated, a refrain I was getting good at. At the scene, he said. I have a suspended license. There were I'm sorry. There are 1,000 versions of me that could have shouted. The one on the phone didn't. Are you done? I asked. He paused. Yes. Good, I said, and hung up. I allowed myself one private thing. I went into the garage and hit the punching bag I bought during a January where I thought cardio could fix my personality. I hit it until my hands hurt through the gloves. I said a few words I don't say in front of Chloe. Moose watched from the doorway, head tilted like he wished he had thumbs for the bag too. Evelyn texted updates like a nurse who had never been trained but was trying. Headache low, nausea intermittent, sleeping now. Frank did not text. By evening, Laura asked if we could come over. I want to talk, she wrote. All of us, if Chloe is okay with that. We went. The living room smelled like coffee and thyme. Laura sat with a blanket over her legs and the look of a person suspended over a cliff who isn't asking to be pulled up, just to be looked at honestly. I'm not going to justify, she said. I'm going to tell you how it happened. She explained the vendor, the conference in June, a joke that went too far, lunches that became lies. It was textbook in a way that made me want to burn the textbook. I told myself you were busy, she said to me, and that Chloe was grown and that I could have this one thing. I knew it was wrong. I did it anyway. She paused. I ended it 2 weeks ago. I told him not to contact me. I was an idiot to see him last night. He asked to talk. I thought I needed to say sorry in person to end it completely. I should have said no. I didn't. Evelyn said what mothers say, marriage is complicated. Frank said what fathers sometimes should, nothing. Chloe looked at her mother like she was a guest speaker at a class on regret. You told yourself a story, Chloe said. And we were the bad guys in it. She swallowed. You could have died. Laura nodded. I know. We talked about what came next, speaking in nouns because verbs were too bendy. Counselor. Schedule. House. Money. Chloe. We decided Laura would stay with her parents for a week, then reevaluate. We decided we would see a therapist who came highly recommended by 3 people I trust and 1 stranger on a parenting forum I don't, because sometimes the internet and real life overlap in useful ways. On the way home, Chloe stared out the window and said, I don't want to know his last name. I said, okay. She said, but if I see him, I want to know to leave. I said, he won't be around. I meant it as a command thrown into the universe. The next days were a combination of small logistics and large silences. I cooked things that didn't require recipes. Chloe did her laundry with the machine that announces done in a voice that makes it sound proud of itself. I texted Laura every morning, how's your head? She responded, sore. Better. Fog. Once she sent a picture of Moose from a year ago and wrote, I miss him. I sent back a picture of Moose asleep under the table, like a hostage holding today's newspaper. The therapist had a waiting room with calm colors and a stack of the kind of magazines you only read in offices. She introduced herself as Mara and looked at us like the 3 of us were a puzzle that could be solved with time and less ego. She asked us to explain the facts without using the word always. Laura spoke first, because that's what courage looks like sometimes, showing up first to your own firing squad. I spoke second and said the things that were true without being tidy. I loved our life, I was too comfortable in it, I didn't see what I didn't want to see, I am angrier than I know what to do with, I am not a man who throws plates. Chloe sat with her arms crossed and then uncrossed them, the small movement of a person deciding to participate. I don't need details, she said to Mara. I need a plan where I don't spend the next year being the adult for the adults. Mara nodded. Then let's make it so. We built, not a bridge, that's too romantic, not a contract, too cold, something like a scaffolding. 2 nights a week Laura at our house for dinner, no overnights for now. Separate finances until we decide if together makes sense. Full access to devices for both of us, an equity of intrusion that felt necessary and also gross. Transparency, Mara said, isn't the goal. It's the road. I wrote that down in my phone and then wrote it on a sticky note and stuck it to the inside of a cabinet where I knew I'd see it, the way people stick verses or recipes. Frank came over on Saturday with his toolbox. We fixed the door that had been sticking and the gutter that had been sagging. We didn't talk about Laura until I handed him a beer and we leaned on the railing like men who had installed it yesterday. I'm angry, he said. At her. At me. At whatever story she told herself that felt better than the one we wrote as a family. I'm angry at a stranger named Tom, I said. And also at myself for not demanding a different version of us 6 months ago. You didn't cause this, he said in a way that made me believe him for 15 minutes. Sometimes 15 minutes is plenty. Evelyn brought a lasagna with too much cheese and cried in my kitchen like she had run out of better rooms. I always thought you two were. She trailed off because the sentence was a lie before it left her mouth. I'm sorry, she said instead. I'm sorry my girl did this. I'm sorry you have to carry it. I'm sorry Chloe had to see you both like this. Thank you, I said, and meant all three. Laura came by Sunday with a bag of groceries and a list of bills. We stood in the doorway like neighbors. Moose whined and wagged his tail and acted like the one with the shortest memory. Chloe said hello and then went upstairs because hello was all she had. Laura and I went over the account passwords and her follow-up appointment and the fact that the police would want a formal statement from her later in the week. She said she had already given them Tom's information. He called me, she added, eyes going small, to apologize. I told him never again. She looked at me to see whether that sentence bought her anything. It didn't. That's not how currency works. At night, when the house was quiet in the way of houses that are doing their best, I walked past the bookshelf and saw our wedding album on the bottom shelf. I pulled it out and opened it and looked at the photograph of us at 25 and 19, the one where my tie is crooked and Laura is laughing at the joke my brother told about her bouquet being heavy enough to count as strength training. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I closed the book and put it back and stood there for a minute, the way people do in museums when they can't decide whether the thing is art or a warning. I don't know the ending. That's not a dodge, it's the only honest thing left some days. I know the middle looks like this, a morning where Chloe pours coffee into a to-go cup and kisses Moose's head and says I'll be late, not telling me why because she's allowed privacy too. An afternoon where I answer emails and tell a contractor yes we can deliver to the back alley if the driver is careful. An evening where Laura sits across from me at our table and we talk about Chloe's psych midterm and the broken dryer belt and the way the sun is down by 5 now, and then she leaves before 9 because that's the rule, and the house goes back to being the house. Sometimes, watching football with the sound low because the announcers remind me of men who love certainty too much, I think about the call at 1:13 a.m. and how those numbers add up to 5. And how 5 was Chloe's age when she ran into the ocean for the first time and then ran back because the waves were bigger than her bravery. I think about how bravery is often just turning back around and trying again in smaller steps. Last Wednesday, Chloe sent a text from campus. We talked about moral luck in class. How outcomes change the judgment. I keep thinking about the car. I wrote back, you don't owe the word luck anything. She sent a heart, then a meme of a dog in a lab coat. Because she is still 19 and the internet is still the internet. Laura's bruise faded from purple to yellow to gone. The cut at her hairline healed into a thin silver line like a comet. The concussion made lights hurt for 2 weeks. She bought sunglasses large enough to count as a disguise. She keeps showing up to therapy, to dinner, to the version of us that doesn't promise anything except not to lie. Some days that feels like charity. Some days it feels like a miracle. Most days it feels like work. Officer Wynn called to say the case was closed. Tom had been cited for leaving the scene and for the license. He had taken a plea. Unfortunate, the officer said. He meant everything. On the first Sunday of Advent, Chloe lit a candle at church and read the line about hope. Her voice didn't shake. After, she hugged Laura in the parking lot for the first time since the hospital. It wasn't long, but it happened. Laura cried in the car and then wiped her face and asked if we had milk at home. It felt obscene and perfect that life insisted on continuing to ask for milk. If you ask me what I've learned, I'll tell you a list because lists make me feel like a person who can build things. Answer the phone, keep gas in the car, teach your kid to drive with both hands, label the spare keys, know where the good flashlight is, don't let the dog pick up gum from the sidewalk, don't say always, don't say never. If you hurt people, say it with nouns. If you are hurt, stand still until your breath returns. Remember that most of what we call forgiveness is the decision to keep showing up with better boundaries. Plant something that will outlive the argument. Last night, Chloe called to say she'd be staying on campus to study late with a friend, and I told her to text when she was home. Laura sent a message that said, "Can I bring soup tomorrow?" I said yes because yes was easiest and truest. I walked Moose, who sniffed the same patch of grass for 3 minutes like it contained a secret only he could decode. The sky was cold and clear. A plane blinked its way toward a runway that had been there longer than I have, longer than the first mistake, longer than the last apology. I went inside. I set 2 bowls on the counter in case. I checked the battery in the flashlight. I turned off the porch light and then turned it back on because we're a house and that's what houses do. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the A.E.N. Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.